Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered. Now, this week we're joined by author Michael, who's got a fascinating story to tell. Hi, Michael. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Lee.
Before we get into your story, we're just going to do a couple of get to know you questions, if that's all right.
Sure.
So, the first one is if you could trade lives with a character or a person for a day, who would it be and why?
Ooh, that's not an easy one. Um, it would probably be someone like, oh, maybe Grant Cardone, just because he's so super successful and super influential. But I could have chosen lots of other people, but
Yeah.
it's just the person that came in my mind at the time.
If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what food would that be and why?
It'd probably have to be vegetables, although I don't really like vegetables, but I know it's good for me.
Could have a chat with one species of animals, what animal would that be?
I suppose it'd be next closest might be, oh no, would I be? Maybe birds. Maybe birds.
And obviously, because we're on the internet, I don't know if you watch a lot of online stuff, but if you do, what's the craziest or wildest thing you've seen on the internet?
Oh, God. I've seen people doing some really stupid things, you know. I've seen people really abusing women on the internet, and it's
Yeah,
on the internet, you know. It's not like,
exactly.
I mean, it shouldn't be happening anyhow, but certainly it's it just makes you think, are they thinking? Is there anything there? I don't know.
No, 100%. And last one as well, we said you are an author, but what would the title of your autobiography be?
How I became super influential and changed the world.
That's a brilliant title. I love that. Right, so getting into your story, so you're a social worker. Something happened many years ago. Would you
Yeah.
like to go into what happened?
Do you know that in the UK, at least one child is killed every week by a parent?
Right, okay. One a week, wow.
Once a week, yeah. When I first heard that statistic, I was shocked, stunned. But I shouldn't have been. You see, as I said, I'm a professionally qualified social worker with over 30 years' experience of working with children, families, and the courts. And the person you see before you is bold and confident and is able to answer questions at court. But it wasn't always that way. If I was to take you back some 30 years, you'd have seen someone who wasn't bold, who wasn't confident, who was inexperienced and couldn't answer any questions at court. You see, at that time, I was working with a 3-year-old little girl and her parents. And I really very quickly understood and appreciated that I didn't want to go and see the family. It wasn't that I didn't want to see this little girl. It was that I didn't want to see the parents because the parents detested me. And they showed me that they detested me in every way that they could. So, you know, and you know, one of my failings at the time was I liked to be liked, and I wasn't liked. So it just made it a really uncomfortable experience for me. But I was the child social worker, so I had to go. Didn't have an option.
Sorry to interrupt. Why did the family need a social worker in the first place?
Because there was lots of concerns about the way this little girl was being treated.
Right, okay.
Now, picture the scene. It's a glorious summer's day. And no, Lee, that's not a figment of my imagination. We still have some nice
Yeah.
summer days in the UK, just not anywhere near as many as I'd like. But on nice summer's days, I normally feel buoyant. I feel jovial. I feel happy to be alive. But on this particular warm day, I didn't feel the same. And I realized it's because I was going to go and needed to go and see this family, and I just didn't feel like it. But as I said before, I didn't have an option. So I made my way from work to where the family lived. They didn't live far, it's only about 3 minutes journey. They lived in a high-rise block of flats. So I went up in the lift, got out of the lift, and said, "Now, Michael, steel yourself. Don't let anything they say or do affect your professionalism." I then went and I knocked on the door. The mother came, sneered at me, and did an about turn and went straight back inside. That is the way she habitually treated me. But as I stepped into the threshold, into this flat, it was just like stepping into a totally different world. You see, outside, the sun was shining, it was bright, it was glorious. Inside here, it was dark, it was cold, it was eerie. It was a type of place where your ears and your back of your neck stick up. I felt like I'd stepped into a Twilight Zone or some kind of horror movie. The flat was a shell. The wallpaper was ripped and torn. The carpets were kind of frayed and the floorboards were showing. The place didn't stink, but it didn't smell particularly pleasant. The parents were over one side of the flat, huddled together, whispering. When I spoke to them, the best I get is a grunt or a groan in response. The father never looked at me, not once. The mother would look at me, but she always had a perpetual snarl on her face, like she was just about ready to attack me at any minute. The only person who gave me any degree of welcome was this 3-year-old little girl. She's always in her playpen, holding onto the rails like that. And it always made me think that's a little prison, because she's always there, holding onto these rails. The other things I remember about this little girl was that she always looked a bit grubby. Her clothes had stains in them. Her hair looked like it needed cleaning and combing. I can remember the stains from her tears, where the tears had rolled down her cheeks and were now mingling with the snot in between her nose and her mouth. And she just looked like she needed to be picked up, cleaned off, given a little cuddling, kissing, cuddling, just taken care of and given a bit of attention. But she never seemed to get it. Now, the other thing about this little girl, the thing that was most conspicuous were her eyes. Her eyes were always trained on me. She wasn't looking at her mum. She wasn't looking at her dad. She wasn't looking anywhere else around the flat, just at me. And that was something I couldn't understand. You see, I knew even at that stage, even though I was inexperienced and green, that children always look at their parents because they love their parents. But this little girl was just looking at me, and that was a mystery that I just couldn't fathom. One day, one weekday morning, bright and early, I got a phone call from my manager asking me to come into work as soon as possible. She told me there had been a tragedy on one of my cases. She didn't tell me which one. I thought, tragedy, what does that mean? Maybe someone's had an accident. That's all I could think. Someone's had an accident, someone's hurt themselves. I made my way into work. When I saw my manager, she seemed to take a deep breath. And then she mouthed the words that made it clear to me that my life was never going to be the same. She told me the little girl had been brutally murdered by her father. And what that meant for me, amongst other things, was that I was going to have to give an account of the work that I'd done and the work that I hadn't done to keep her safe. And chief amongst the people I'd have to give this account to was the courts. Now, I'd never been to court before. I didn't know what to expect, but I did know enough, just from the way that people around me were, they were nervous, that I knew it wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be pleasant. It certainly wasn't going to be a walk in the park. That much I knew. What I also remember at the time was that some people kind of distanced themselves from me because, as you can imagine, maybe the worst thing that can happen to you as a social worker is that you're killed yourself. The next worst thing that can happen is that your social worker of a child is killed. No one wants that experience. So people didn't want to be tarnished with the same brush. So some people it's not everyone, but some people kind of distance themselves from me. And whilst that is understandable in hindsight, I understand it. It did make an already lonely experience very isolating. What I also remember was that in the days and weeks and months leading up to court, I felt like there was this big, dark, heavy cloud hanging over me, just waiting to come down on me. And I realized that's what I felt about court. This was going to happen to me. I wanted to get away from it. I wanted to get anywhere away from it, but I couldn't. It was waiting to happen to me. There's nothing I could do about it. It was just something that was horrible, was just waiting to take place. Well, as I said, I did go to court. I went to the Royal Courts of Justice, which is in the Strand. Picture a big stone cathedral. It's kind of like that. And when I got in through the doors and went through the electronic security system, the first thing I remember was just how cold it was. It was freezing in there. is there's a big stone building and lots of courts. But it's not just cold in terms of the temperature. Because I don't know if you know, Lee, or I don't know if your audience knows that courts aren't pleasant places. They're not friendly, warm places. They're toxic places. They're places full of conflict and acrimony. Well, eventually I found my way to the court I was meant to be in, because there's many different courts in the Royal Courts of Justice. And when I got there, I was placed in this witness box. I didn't want to be there. Now, if you've ever been placed somewhere where you don't want to be at by someone in authority over you, well, you know exactly how I felt. I felt trapped. I didn't want to be there. But the judge had told me I had to be there, so I had to stay there. And whilst I'm in the witness box that I really don't want to be at, I want to be anywhere else, I mean literally anywhere else, that's when I'm being asked these horrible, horrible, horrible questions by these barristers. These barristers are making out that I'm the person responsible for the child's death. They're saying if I'd have done this or if I hadn't have done that, this child would still be alive. And they're flipping it all. The blame is all going to me. That's the way they spun it. And I can't believe it. I can't believe that they're saying this. See, at the time when I'm at my lowest ebb, when I'm traumatized, when I feel guilty, when I feel I'm experiencing loss, when I'm not prepared emotionally, psychologically, or professionally, because I'm too inexperienced for giving evidence. That's the time I'm being asked to try and answer these horrible questions, which I can't answer. I can't deal with them. And these questions are coming in thick and fast. In fact, I feel like a dartboard, this massive dartboard, and these questions are like being hurled through the air and they're hitting me all over the place. But I can't get out of the way because I'm in the witness box. I'm a sitting duck. And I don't know how to deflect these questions, and I don't know how to deal with them. So they're all hitting me all over the place. Now, are they hitting me physically? No. Are they hurting me physically? No. But psychologically and emotionally, I'm in the most intense pain. And at one stage, I'm in so much pain that I'm in denial. I don't believe this is happening to me because I'm thinking this isn't real. This can't be happening. And then I think to myself, there's got to be someone here who cares. Someone here must be able to help me. Someone here must have a heart. But as I look around the room, I don't see anyone with a heart. I don't see anyone who's going to help me. And I realized at that time that I'm on my own. No one's come to help me. I'm going to have to deal with this ordeal by myself. And as that realization dawns on me, I think of this little girl. Because she's on her own. She's on her own in her playpen. And I realize she's hoping, wishing, begging, pleading for someone to come and help her, someone to come and save her. And at that very moment, I realized I realized two things. One is that she's hoping, begging, wishing, but I also realized that the person she's hoping to save her is none other than me. And that's why she's not looking at her mum, or that's why she's not looking at her dad. She's not looking at her parents because she knows they're not going to save her. They are the people who are abusing her. She's looking at me because I was her one hope of being saved. Only I couldn't save her at the time because I didn't understand what her facial expressions and body language were trying to convey to me. I wasn't skilled enough. I wasn't experienced enough. I wasn't well enough attuned to her needs to understand what she was trying to say to me. So I wasn't able to save her. I wish I had been able to.
When that happened, because like I said to you off camera, we were sort of in the same, not the same field of work, but I work with young people like kicked out of school and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember, like 6 or 7 months ago, there was a stabbing on a bus in the Woolwich area of a 16-year-old on a bus. No, sorry, a 14-year-old and 2 16-year-olds were accused. But one of the accused, I spent 2 years working with, like last year, the year before. And when I saw, because I put a lot of work into giving him the tools, like when it comes to like personal social development, understanding the law, joint enterprise, and all that stuff. When I see he was named as one of the murderers, it made me feel like, what's the point of what I've been doing for the last 20 years? Because I felt like I gave him all the tools I could, and he still made that decision that's just changed his life. Did that sort of happen with you? Like, you tried your best with what you're allowed to do within the system, and then all of a sudden this tragedy happened, but then you're also then thrown in a court, and then everyone's trying to chuck the blame onto you. Did that? What was going through your mind at the time?
At the I mean, I'll answer that, but I'll also come
Yeah,
back and answer it more in more detail afterwards.
yeah,
Um, at the time, I was traumatized. I was
okay,
literally traumatized. So I knew it wasn't right. I knew, but I mean, I also felt guilty myself.
yeah,
But I knew it wasn't right. I knew I hadn't done a good enough job. But then you have to realize I wasn't experienced enough at the time. This was a long time ago. So
but is it your fault, or is it the system's fault? Because you keep saying you weren't experienced enough, but you were still sent out to work with that family in the field. If it was a complex case, then maybe they should have sent. Like, I know you've got to get your experience, but why send someone new out?
that's what they do. It's like you know, a manager will make a decision about, and it will also be down to how many cases other people have got and who wants the
Yeah,
case and those sorts of things. I wanted the case. I was young and experienced, but I wanted to get on. I thought it might progress me in my
yeah,
career, and in a way, it did progress my career, but not in the way I expected it. You know,
yeah,
um, I learned an awful lot because of that experience, but I would much rather have learned it in a different way
yeah,
at the time. But now, when I look back now, everything happened the way it was meant to happen. But
yeah,
at the time, I hated it. I literally hated it. So to answer your question, it's dependent because it's not like there's not like there's infinite resources. They're finite
no,
resources. So there are only
exactly.
so many social workers around. Everyone's got their own cases. Some people have got more pressing cases. Others, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's like that. So yeah, as I said, I wish I'd been able to save her, but I wasn't able to. But this little girl, that there were some similarities between what was going on for me and what was going on for her. We're
yeah,
both caught in our respective prisons. Her and her playpen, me in the witness box. Both of us didn't want to be there. We wanted to be anywhere else, and we wanted someone to save us, but that wasn't happening. So no one was saving us, and in fact, we were wishing in vain. Yeah. So actually, that's where the similarity ended, because what this little girl went through was a million times worse than what I went through. I can
yeah,
only begin to imagine the horrors that this poor child was exposed to at such an early age. But what I can tell you, without a word of a lie, that what I went through in that witness box, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy ever. I don't know how long it went on for. Could have been an hour, could have been 2 hours, could have been more than 2 hours. I don't know. What I can tell you with absolute certainty is that when you're in absolute agony, 5 minutes seems like a lifetime. Now, eventually the judge looked at me, just glared at me and dismissed me, which is just as well because I couldn't answer any questions anyhow. When he did that, I wanted to run a million miles from court. I wanted to get the hell out of there. I never want to see the inside of a court ever again. I was done with social work. I didn't want anything more to do with it. I had enough. And that's what I planned to do. But something stopped me. Something stopped me and said, no, Michael, you're not going to run. You are going to go back again and again and again until you get frigging good at giving evidence, until you can defend yourself properly at court. And that's exactly what I did. I went back again. I immersed myself in court. I went back again and again and again and again until I got good. And I got good very quickly because I put all my energies into it. And over a period of time, I was able to write a book about giving evidence in court to help other people. Now, I couldn't save this little girl. It was too late. My attitude had changed though, and I realized that no one was coming to save me. I had to save myself. And as a result of that, I'm able to save an awful lot of other people from going through the hell that I went through.
Yeah.
It's a shame that I couldn't save this little girl, but the best thing I can do is make something worthwhile come out of it. Yeah. So that's what I've been doing. In my mind, I've certainly been focusing on that. In that period of time, I've also developed a 5-step system. A 5-step system to help anyone give great evidence at court to give themselves the very best chance of getting the result they want. Because I believe everyone has the right to have or deserves to have the best chance of getting what they want at court. Because I know how important it is for them.
Sorry to interrupt before we go on to your 5 steps. What do you think it is about the justice system that does that to people? So I just done jury service back in November at Belmarsh, and the accused was a teenager. He was about 19, but it was to do with other teenagers. And one of the victims was on the stand, and he was made to feel so bad that he was crying while giving his evidence because of, like you said, the defence barrister laid into him like everything was his fault, but he was a victim. It didn't make sense to me. Why do you think the system's set up that way?
Because it's adversarial. Listen, they do not care about your feelings.
Yeah,
They want to get to what they think is the truth or what they see as the truth so that they can make decisions and then get on to the next case.
yeah,
So you're talking about giving evidence or being cross-examined, it's meant to be brutal. It's not meant to be pleasant. It's meant to
it wasn't a nice watch as a
no,
jury member. It wasn't
no,
nice to see.
it's not. You are put in a position whereby you're under pressure.
Yeah,
You're giving evidence under pressure. And it's done that way so to see if they can get out of you what they want to get out of you. Yeah. So it is a very stressful situation. It's something
yeah.
stress. It's a stress test. That's what it is. They're stress testing you. They test your evidence, what you say, whilst under intense pressure.
It's not
But
fair on
again,
the victims, in my opinion.
yeah, the thing is, you know, you don't. If someone's guilty, they're going to have to put them under. They're going to stress test them. But
Yeah,
the thing is, a lot of people aren't guilty,
but,
and they're stress tested anyhow. So it's the system's not perfect. It's far from
yeah,
perfect, and that's another reason why I do what I do, and why I want to help a lot of people, because I know that a lot of people are going to suffer. Yeah.
yeah. So, like you said, you created 5 steps. What is the
So
five
yeah,
steps?
it's a 5-step system called CALM, and the first step in the system begins with letter C, and C stands for, believe it or not, calm. When you're giving evidence, you have to be calm. And you have to be in control of your thoughts, feelings, and actions or behaviour. You have to if you want to give good evidence. There's just no other way around it. And you can't give good evidence when you're not calm. You just can't think. You can't reason. So that's the first step in the system. The second step begins with letter A, and A stands for attitude. You have to have a fantastic attitude. Doesn't matter what the judge is saying to you, how the judge is treating you, how the barristers are treating you. You still have to have a fantastic attitude if you're going to give great evidence and be seen as giving great evidence at court. Having a great attitude is so important. And a lot of people go to court with a bad attitude and don't realize that they're harming their own chances. So having a great attitude is super important. That's the second step in the 5-step system. Third step begins with the letter L, and L stands for listening. Maybe if I'd have been a better listener, maybe if I'd been more attuned to this little girl, maybe at that time I would have been able to save her. I don't know. But I wasn't at the time. Also, when you're in court, you have to be able to listen and listen attentively, because the judge will tell you to do things, and the judge may ask you for questions. The barrister will definitely ask you. The people cross-examining you will definitely ask you questions. If you can't listen, you can't give good evidence. If you can't give, you can't give evidence. You can't respond. If you can't give good evidence, you're not likely to get the result you need. So it's so important to be able to listen and hear what's been asked of you. That's the third step in the 5-step system. The fourth step begins with letter M, and M stands for mindfulness. When you're asked the question, you have to think, you have to be mindful and think about how you're going to answer that question. You can't just blurt something out. You have to think about answering that question in a way that's consistent with the other evidence you've given, both verbal and written. You have to think about answering it in a way that's consistent with what's in the child's best interests. And you have to think about answering a question in such a way that it's consistently high quality. So the judge values that evidence above everyone else's and prefers that evidence. So you influence the judge to see your evidence as better, as a higher quality. And when you can do that, well, actually, you can't do that again if you're not calm, if you don't have a great attitude, and if you don't have the ability to listen, and if you can't be mindful. Yeah. So you can see each component, each step links in with the other one. Yeah. And the final step in the process is mastery. And only when you can do the be calm, have a great attitude, be able to listen, and be mindful, can you develop mastery. When you develop that mastery, then you're in a position to give the best type of evidence, to give yourself the very best chance of getting the result you want and need at court. So that's my 5-step system. Okay. So that's it, really. I think there's a lot of people who need that help, because let me just put something to you very quickly before we talk about the other things we want to bring up. When you're out in the street, and this is not just to you, Lee, to anyone who's listening, when you're out in the street and someone attacks you, how do you deal with it? You can fight back, you can run and hide, you can enlist the help of someone, or you can call the police. Basically, you know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it if you're in the witness box?
Exactly. I think you're correct, because it's not a situation that's sort of socially aware of, because not everyone goes out and gets attacked every day, but because it's a social thing, we sort of get told how to respond, where a courtroom situation's not so no one really talks about it. So you're correct in what you're saying, yeah.
And no one really talks about it, not because it doesn't happen to them,
Like,
but what happens is that exactly what happened. It's 30 years since this, over 30 years ago that happened to me. I never talked about it for 30 years. I didn't talk about it because I was embarrassed, I was ashamed, and I was hurt, and I was traumatized with it. That is what it does to you. Yes, the experience of a child dying and all that things, but also that compounded with the courts and the way the courts treated me.
yeah.
I didn't want to talk about it. Yeah. So I believe that there are probably millions of people who've gone to court and they're traumatized. They don't talk about it. They want to brush it under the carpet and pretend it didn't happen because they don't know how to deal with it. And there's no one there helping them to deal with it. So I suspect there's millions of people who have had that happen to them. I suspect there will be millions of people who will continue to have that happen to them. Unless I can get round to as many people as I can. Because that's really what's happening.
Yeah.
You know? People aren't going to talk about it, Lee, because it's too painful for them. You know?
So, so you offer that as a service, do you? How do people get in contact with you then if they need your help and support?
I just opened a group on Facebook called Giving Evidence. So if you know of anyone, just point them in my direction.
So anyone watching, if you do need that, all the links will be in the description below, and then get you to Michael as quick as possible. Also, like you said earlier on as well, you wrote a book. Where can people find your book?
They can get it on Amazon. It's called Family Court, Giving Evidence in the Family Court. Yeah.
Brilliant. I think it's a really good thing, and it's not something until we linked up I actually thought about. So I think it's really good to have someone that's able to give advice. And I'm sorry you had to go through trauma and the tragedy to get to this point, but like you said, things happen for a reason sometimes.
Yeah, it does. And as I said, I hated it at the time, but it happens for a reason. I mean, I don't want that little girl to have died in vain. So I want to make it, people need to know these things, But the thing is, you don't know. People can die as a result of this. They might die straight away, but as a result of the traumatic experiences, one thing leads to another, and their health goes down. They get depressed, they take their life, or something else happens. These
Yeah.
are things happening. There's not enough research into how people are impacted by court.
Because your experience in court, how did it make you feel in a way towards not just the justice system, but the law itself? Because if you'd had that experience, say something happened to you, you wouldn't want to go back to court to get justice because you went through a traumatic. So would you not report a crime? Would you not?
Because I made a decision somewhere inside of me. Remember, I said I was going to run away. I was never going to go
Yeah,
back. Something inside of me, and I think it's rage.
yeah,
Decided no, that's never gonna happen to me again. I'm gonna go back and go because what happened to me today is I'm never gonna allow anyone to do that to me again. And that's where I made sure no one's gonna do that to me again because I figured out that what happened was a violation of me.
yeah.
It violated me. So
And
I
you weren't even
decided.
the accused. That's the funny thing. No.
No, but this is the
It's just a
thing.
witness.
No, no. Well, all right. Now, to be fair, I'm a social worker, so you put yourself in harm's way when you're a social worker. That's what you do, right? Not that you want to, but that's part of the job.
Yeah,
But to be criticised and blamed and you know be treated in that way, and the way other social workers have been criticised and blamed when a child has died, it makes you realize that this is what society is like. This is partly what the media is like. This is what the law is like. This is what's going on. Um, and the reality is, it's parents who are killing children.
yeah, exactly.
Right? That's what is happening. But we're living in a world where rather than face that, because people don't want to see that, they want to blame someone for it. Right? And social workers are easy targets to blame.
I know it's a completely different thing, but I also feel that with the education system, when things ain't going right, it's like parents want the educators to be the parent.
Yeah.
But hang on, you're the parents, that's your job.
Yeah.
We're there to educate your child, you're there to raise your child. We're not there to raise, educate,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. But the moment something goes wrong, and as you said, it's the social worker's fault, it's the school system's fault.
Yeah.
People don't look at themselves when things
That's
go
right.
wrong as the parent.
They don't take the listen.
Accountability.
Yeah. Responsibility. They want to blame. Right. We
Yeah.
live in a world where,
Blame.
and it's not just people. We see it. We see politicians do it.
Yeah.
We see governments do it. We see countries do it. We're seeing it now.
Yeah.
Throughout the world, we're seeing it. You know, people don't want it. No one wants to take responsibility because who wants to take? Who wants to be criticised? Everyone wants to point the finger at someone else, but while you're doing the pointing of the finger, it's not helping. It's not helping the situation. But that's what we want to do. So yeah, that's going on. And to get back to your other point earlier, because I don't want to forget it.
Oh yeah.
You do the best job you can do. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
And it's like being a parent. There's a time when you're growing up your kids where it's like, whatever you do, they're messing up, or they don't see it, or they don't appreciate what you're doing for them, and it's like, God, it's never going to end, but it is going to end because there's a time, probably in their 20s, late 20s, or early 30s, where they probably turn around and say, God, I appreciate what Mum and Dad tried to do to me for me then. I just didn't see it for years. Yeah. Well, it's the same with the people that you're trying to work with. Maybe something's happened to that kid for so long that you're not in their life for long enough to give them what they need. Yeah. Maybe they've grown up with certain things that's made it very, very difficult for them to turn the corner in the time span that you would like them to. Yeah. So it's not that you've done a bad job. It's not that they couldn't learn or they couldn't do. It's sometimes that people, if they've had 16 years being treated in a certain way, being exposed to certain thing, that you might come along in a year or two, but you're not going to change it in a year or two.
Yeah. Now, other people did say that to me, but I just felt a bit of responsibility because I felt like I could put a lot of effort in, and I felt like speaking to that young person, there was progress, but then you hear something that cast like, and I don't know because I've left the place I was working at. I obviously had no contact for 6 months. I don't know the full ins and outs. You only hear bits
Yeah,
in the media, so
yeah,
I don't know what led to that choice he made. But I just feel a bit disappointed that he didn't take that extra 10, 15 seconds to make a better
yeah.
decision. I felt partly responsible because I spent 2 years trying to install that into someone. Like you said, I agree with what you're saying, and people have said the same, but I just did take it to heart a bit.
Well, we do because you want you're doing the job because you want to make progress. You want to have an impact, a positive impact. We
Yeah,
all do.
definitely ain't for the money. So
Yeah, let's not go down that road. But yeah, you do it because you care. I mean, there's still people going, "Oh, you want the money." Well, for what I have to do, the money doesn't even, the money is absolutely nothing. But anyhow, yeah, I was just gonna say, you do it because you want to make an impact. You want to make a positive impact, and that's why you do the things you do. And you hope that down the and it's not always going to be straight away. That's
no,
just the reality. Do I think do I think about the law and the courts? Because I went back and back. I went back several times. I've just learnt more about what the system is. You
yeah.
know, and I don't.
Do you think it's a correct system?
No. If I had a better way, I'd be. I haven't. Maybe I haven't put my mind to thinking about how it could be better. I might not have a better way.
Yeah,
All I know is that at this moment is that it's not fair. There's a lot of things, a lot of people who are being treated unfairly, and the courts and the lawyers they don't really care about it.
care.
They don't really care, and I don't think they really realise what I don't think. I think they can turn a blind eye to what is really happening to people sometimes at
Yeah,
court. And as I say in my book, there's no level playing field. The barristers are up here, you are down here, and the barristers are getting higher and higher each day because they're honing their skills. What are we
yeah,
doing? We're not honing our skills. We don't know what we're doing. So
makes sense.
what I'm trying to do is help people redress that balance. Yeah, give them a chance so that they can actually leave court, whether they get what they want or not, leave court with their head held high, leave court not feeling at least that they've, gave it their best shot. Leave court thinking, well, you know what, at least I said what I wanted, or what I need to say in a positive and productive way, rather than
Yeah.
just shouting and swearing because you just get, that won't be helpful. So, yeah, the way I look at it is the most important thing is give people a chance to level up, give people a chance to give themselves the best chance of getting the result they want, because it's really important. The things are high, the ante is high, the kind of steps, the stages, the stakes are really high.
Yeah.
So it's really important. People don't just decide, oh, wouldn't it be nice to go to court tomorrow? No, people don't think that way. They're going to court because
Exactly.
it's bloody important, So trying to give them what they need, trying to give them the help that they need is what I want to spend a lot of time doing, helping people. And so these talks that I love, I've begun to love now, which I hated even thinking about it years ago.
Yeah.
Are talks to help me people, raise my profile so that people know that there's this service out there, because I don't think there's many people who know that there's hardly anyone knows that there's this service out there.
And it's a service well needed. Can I just did the father get found guilty? Was there justice
Yeah.
brought?
I can't remember all the details. I know he went to prison. I don't know how.
No good.
But
No.
I must admit, when I was traumatized for years.
Yeah, I
So
bet.
I left where I was working. I went elsewhere. I just
Yeah,
traumatized.
understandable. People watching, just please just spread the word, and hopefully, in the way you never need to use that service. But if you do, then please know that it's available and it's there. It's there for help. So
A lot of people, Lee, are going to need it.
yeah,
You might go down the road and get attacked.
you might see something happening and need to be witness.
anything can happen, and you
Yeah,
might have to go give evidence. You might break up with your wife or your girlfriend or whatever, and you have a child and whatever. You know, anything. You just listen. People think, oh, it hasn't happened to me, so but it can happen to anybody at any
exactly.
time. And you're not
Exactly.
prepared for it. You're not ready for it. That's the reality.
But Michael, it's been so great speaking with you. I've got one last question. This question I ask every guest. If you could be remembered for one word and one word only, what would it be and why?
Phenomenal.